Thank you for joining me. My name is Manesh Patel. I'm from Duke University, and I'm here at the Heart.org booth at the American Heart Association's meeting in 2011. And joining me today is Dr. Kowey to describe the ALPHEE study.
On behalf of the ALPHEE investigators, I'll be presenting data regarding the efficacy and the safety of a new drug called celivarone for patients who have implantable cardioverter defibrillator systems. Now, the background of this study is that we all have patients with ICDs, and unfortunately, these patients are prone to the development of frequent ventricular arrhythmias that can lead to device activation, shock, and leading to cardiovascular mortality and total mortality. The search has been going on for a long time to find safe and effective drugs for this indication. Many of us currently use sotalol and amiodarone based on the results of some clinical trials that were reasonably successful in proving efficacy and safety, but no drug has ever been approved by the Food and Drug Administration for this particular indication, and the truth is that there are many patients who don't have either efficacy or safety with the therapy that's currently available. Celivarone is the daughter of jonedarone. It is a benzofuran derivative, a once-a-day drug with fewer drug interactions and a fairly good safety profile that we researched in phase 2 clinical development and discovered in a study called ICARIOS that it had efficacy within a relatively narrow dose range. ICARIOS was a small study, but it clearly showed a trend towards efficacy for the prevention of shock and death in patients with implantable defibrillator systems. Based on those results, we decided to go forward with further drug development and devised the study ALPHEE, in which we enrolled nearly 500 patients from 151 centers in 27 countries, and were successful, I think, in proving whether or not celivarone would be effective and safe. The design of the study was 3 doses of celivarone versus placebo, including an amiodarone calibrator. This was a relatively novel aspect of the design of this trial. We thought that using amiodarone not for a direct comparison to celivarone, but rather as a calibrator arm, we would be able to establish assay sensitivity and validity of this trial, since we know how amiodarone should behave in this context. So ALPHEE was successful in its recruitment. In fact, we recruited a little bit ahead of schedule, finished the clinical trial, and locked the data set over this past summer. The manuscript is going to be published in circulation online this week, simultaneously with this presentation. We were successful in our randomization. The groups were well balanced. They were the usual age, gender mix, and left ventricular function and New York Heart Association class that you'd expect in an ICD population, mostly males. Obviously predominantly patients with coronary artery disease and prior myocardial infarctions. We enrolled patients who had had a recent device discharge, if they had a device for primary prevention, or recent implantation of a device for secondary indication. What we discovered in ALPHEE was that there was no statistically significant benefit for any of the doses of celivarone, including the high dose of the drug used in the trial, compared to placebo. There were trends in favor of the 300 milligram dose of celivarone in the trial, which is the highest dose we used, but because we had powered the study to look for a relatively large treatment effect, and because of the fact that we had multiple comparisons with multiple doses, we did not demonstrate a statistically significant benefit. Amiodarone in the trial behaved exactly as we would have expected it to on the primary endpoint of device activations and sudden deaths. It also behaved as we would have expected on the endpoint of shock. We were a little surprised because there was an excess incidence of sudden death in the amiodarone arm that was not seen in the celivarone arm, and that remains a bit unexplained. But the tolerance of celivarone in the clinical trial, again, was quite good and as expected. So we took from this study that unfortunately celivarone at the doses that we studied in this clinical trial was not effective for the indication, but amiodarone behaved as expected. The reason I think this is a very important trial is, first of all, I think it was extremely well executed. Our steering committee, our international steering committee, did a wonderful job of overseeing the study. Our events committee adjudicated 6,000 ICD events successfully, and our Data and Safety Monitoring Board did an excellent job of overseeing the study. I think it's very important. This trial is very important because it also sets a precedent for how we might go about the trial of drugs in the future. The use of a calibrator arm, the dose ranging, and the powering of the study, I think, sets a precedent for the future investigation of drugs for this particular indication. And there will be more drugs, I'm sure, that are examined in this particular mode and in this particular way. So the conclusion of our clinical trial, which we're going to be presenting here at the Heart Association meeting, is that celivarone was not effective for its indication, but it was well tolerated. And again, the study had validity because of the behavior of amiodarone.
Well, thank you for joining us, Dr. Kowey. This was Manesh Patel again from the Heart.org booth. We're getting more great information here at the scientific sessions.